What's happening, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Got a great guest in Sebastian Lanser for today's episode. Some of you might know Sebastian through his incredible work with Panzerballett, formerly Obscura, and more recently Obsidious. Sebastian is definitely a drummer that I've marveled at for many years, and it was super cool talking to him about his work with the aforementioned bands, as well as working on specific techniques and altering one's practice regimen accordingly to acquire those additional technical skills. So I hope y'all dig the techie convo. Today's episode is sponsored by my man Carson Gant, aka OneUpLoops.com. Carson and his team spent an unbelievable amount of time recording over 400,000 shaker, tambourine, and hi-hat loops at every possible tempo in multiple feels, with incredible mics and outboard gear for you to pick and choose. It's organized for you to find exactly what you need with just a few clicks, and everything feels and sounds incredible. You can sign up for free to check it out and gain full access to all 400,000 loops starting at just $5.99 a month. No download limits, whatever you want, whenever you want. New loops, one-shots, and drum breaks are being added weekly, so check it out, and that's OneUpLoops.com. Crash Bang Boom Podcast can be found everywhere podcasts are available, so feel free to check out the near 260-plus episodes. Give me a like, a subscription, and/or a positive review, as the support is appreciated. So without further ado, here we go. Sebastian Lanser, Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Yeah! All right, I'm here with Sebastian Lanser of Obsidious and Panzerballett. Sebastian, how are you, man? All the way from Austria. How's it going?
Yeah, thanks, Jody. I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. I see that. I'm assuming you're in your apartment there. I see an electronic kit, a pad, some notated stuff that you're rolling through, and you're telling me that you're going through your home studio and recording with people. What's been going on with this home studio, and who are you recording with, and how's that been going?
That's what I'm doing mostly these days. I have my studio 15 minutes by car, and I'm there on a daily basis, to work, practice, recording drums, giving online lessons, all that stuff.
Nice.
I don't know if you saw the last playthrough I did for Obsidious. It's called Iconic. I did from my studio.
Yeah, that was killer. I always enjoy your playthroughs or your performances or clinics or whatever. I've watched no shortage of those, and I always end up saying at the end of it, well, shit. That's my reaction to it. Oh my God, oh shit. It's kind of a combination of those things. Yeah, man. It's definitely some incredible stuff, man. So you've got, in addition to doing the teaching, you've got people sending you tracks, and then you're tracking drums for various projects from all over the place, I imagine.
Yeah, I recorded. I don't know if it's a guitar player from Germany. He's an endorser for Ibanez guitars, which is really well known in Germany. It's called Martin Miller.
Uh-huh.
I recorded this album, for example, and a few other projects. It's really cool to record from home because I really can take my time. If you have to book a studio, go somewhere. It's much more expensive, and I can't offer that from my place.
Yeah.
I can't. The only thing is I have to do everything on my own, which is I had to figure that out, to be honest. It took me a while to get all that stuff going and rolling, because it's a lot of my kit is pretty big. I have now 26 channels in use.
Oh my God.
Which is really big. But it took me some months and years to check that out, but it's now fine, and I love to record. Somehow it has been my hobby, from early on, recording myself, listening back to it,
uh-huh.
And because it's the ultimate truth. I always like to practice a lot, sitting on my drums and practicing, and recording myself. It has been part of it ever since.
Absolutely. And were you up and running pre-COVID? So you didn't have to scramble and try to figure all this out during COVID when touring and everything else was down? I mean, if you were set up prior to that, that was a good call on your behalf.
Yeah, right. I had to figure out like doing online lessons because like, with like I have now like 3 camera angles using with, like I want to give my students like the best possibility to like to see and hear everything with good audio and good video. So I have to figure that out too. Like there are up and downsides
Sure.
with this pandemic, like because like the upside would be like definitely that I was looking into new ways to earn money because I'm a musician, a full-time musician. Like,
Yeah. You had mentioned the Obsidious playthrough that you did. As far as I can tell, that's a new band. And if so, I know getting a new band off of the ground and up and running can be truly just an uphill battle, whereas if you join an established band, for instance, a lot of things have already been set in motion, and to get a new band out and up and running can be tough.
yeah,
Is it basically a new band? And I guess how long have you been doing it if that's the case?
it is a new band. When I got out from Obscura, like I left Obscura like 2 years ago after the last European tour we did together. And Raphael and Linus from Obscura left as well.
Oh,
And we formed Obsidious.
okay.
We found our singer in Xavi Pereira, which is a guy living in England. We had a vision of writing music together as we did basically for the album from Obscura prior to the new one, like Diluvium.
Mm-hmm.
Diluvium, we basically wrote a lot of that album together. Linus, Raphael, and me, we wrote a lot of that album together, and we somehow liked that, but we want to go our own path. So we had our own vision of creating music together. So we stayed together and formed the band Obsidious. And again, complex music, like not all of it, but we call it progressive metal because it's like it's extreme metal. It has progressive elements and clean vocals. Javi is a real skilled singer. We took 1 year to write the album. We did it together in COVID times because we never met actually together with Javi. We still never met. So
wow.
Yeah, like we didn't get the chance to meet and hang out.
Right.
We will because we do photos, but Raphael and me and Linus, we most of the time we just met online, writing stuff together.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how actually the album came together.
A virtual band, all created via file sharing and etc. And then still haven't played a gig. I mean, obviously, if y'all haven't all hung out, it goes so far as to say that you haven't played a gig either, because this all kind of started when it started, which is wild. So
yeah,
the whole thing is it seems seemingly distant from everybody, but I mean, in today's times, that's part of it. People are writing records apart from each other everywhere. That's part of how it works. So
yeah, we have worked together for so long before in times of Obscura.
Right.
Like we just had the urgent need to write new music, and like we had a lot of ideas, and it just came out pretty quickly and easy. The more constructed things seem to come out more in a natural way for us. But we also wanted to come up with like more catchier songs as well, more straightforward songs. And so this will be maybe something that's new to the listener, or maybe new to people that knew us before in Obscura, because like the album will be not only straightforward blasting and double bass and odd time signatures and polyrhythms. Yeah, and I like that fact that you also can lean back and play a backbeat and play something simple. I like that too.
The first time I heard of your playing was definitely via Panzerballett. I don't recall exactly which one of my friends, one of my techie, nerdy friends turned me on to it. And interestingly enough, I wanted to ask you, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, the only band that reminds me a little bit, and of course y'all went way more extreme with it, I would say. There was a band in New York that put out some records in the 90s called Lost Tribe. The guitarist is actually his name's David Gilmour, not to be confused with David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. But are you familiar with Lost Tribe at all?
I'm sure I've heard the name.
Interesting. Yeah, like there are absolute correlations there in that there's kind of like odd time stuff with guitars doing sort of jazzy like phrases with I believe an alto horn as well, playing those lines with harmonies and everything. So conceptually, it was kind of similar. It's not on any streaming platform as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
But my buddies have those recordings, and they digitized them off the CDs that they got in the 90s. I might even have some of the stuff. If so, I'll send it to you so you can hear it. But it's really the only band that I could draw any correlation with was this kind of obscure band from the 90s in New York called Lost Tribe, again, with Panzerballett. But
okay.
Well, first of all, I guess, how long has Panzerballett been going? Because from looking at the records, it looks like they span back about 16 years. Have you been doing that band that long?
No. But I came into the band at about like 2008, 2009.
Okay.
And the first album I recorded with them was called Starke Stücke. It's a German title.
2008. Okay, gotcha.
It's a green album. The first album I think they recorded this was someone different.
Gotcha. Interesting, man. That's what I was trying to figure out, because I looked at it. Yeah, the original, the self-titled one came out in 2005. It looks like. So I wasn't sure if you were on that. So you've joined two very, very interesting bands that both have a back catalog in Panzerballett and Obscura. So not only are you writing new stuff with the band, but you're having to learn other people's parts if you're to play some of those songs. And it's something that I talk to people about because everybody has, their own quirks, their own style, their own way of approaching, orchestrating, etc. Was one more challenging than the other in learning the back catalog from Panzerballett to Obscura?
Like with Panzerballett, it was actually pretty natural evolution for me. Like when I came into the band, when Jan asked me to join the band, there was not that much material out. There was just one album.
Right.
That was actually the most fusion sounding album at that time. The lineup was like 2 guitars, bass, tenor saxophone, and drums. So a rock and roll lineup, so to say, with 2 guitars. So, but the way they sounded at that time was like more fusiony sounding. It was maybe a mixture of Scott Henderson, because like a tribal tech, like because they also had like mixed lead guitars with saxophone on top, like so playing lines together. Also that has a very significant sound to it. But Jan had pretty early had the vision of like when he studied music and at university, and he wrote his thesis about Meshuggah.
Oh wow.
And yeah, he wrote about Meshuggah, and he really analyzed a lot of songs, and he always was into that polyrhythmic approach. And he tried to bring that Meshuggah vibe into the band, like having this like jazz approach. All the guys have studied jazz. They improvise and all, so it's a jazz approach when it comes to soloing and improvising, but back then it was not such a metal approach, because like there was not so much like heavy riffing and like quarter chinas and like that sound, but he wanted to bring it like into that direction.
Yeah.
And that's where I came in. Like he called me because he knew I was one of like, I played metal and jazz and fusion and all that stuff. And it's pretty early, but like it was in 2008 or something, but I put out some recordings with my metal band, and there's a lot of double bass also in complex rhythms. And Jan heard that, and he called me then, can we do a meet up and do a jam or something? And that's really how it came together.
Right.
For Starke Stücke, it was the second album. It was more or less everything written. Drumming wise, I had my freedom to do things, but everything actually was already notated. So Jan actually notated the drums.
Wow.
So I had to change some parts here and there and change some notes, but basically it was the thing, like the arrangement. And
wow.
But for the next album, things got more like we played more gigs and we worked more together as a band, and I had developed let's call it like a style. And the natural evolution, I come back to that, natural evolution for me was like to write the drum arrangements myself. So back then we started working with digital audio workstations like Cubase, and I programmed drum lines, drum orchestrations, and sent it back to Jan, and he worked on the, like that's how songs started to taking shape, by just programming stuff. And then we met eventually in the rehearsal room and practiced stuff together. And yeah, so back with the third album, I really started to arrange. I saw it as my main thing. My vision was to create my own style in the band. So I arranged my own drum orchestrations from that time on.
Nice. Well, when I think of like Obscura or Obsidious, between the BPMs and then all the parts and the techie aspects between blast beats and double bass and how everything sort of works together as a sort of intricate puzzle, I would imagine that there's less room for improvisation. So between Obscura and Obsidious, do you find that on most of those songs, everything is through composed, including the fills?
Yeah.
And then that juxtaposed with Panzerballett, I would imagine there are some sections where there is some improvisation.
Right. In Panzerballett, there's always like improvisation. Like even like the forms were amazingly difficult to improvise.
Yeah.
Still, it was like always open. It was always like about improvisation. And with Obscura or Obsidious, it's definitely not. It's like we were following a more classical approach, so to say, when it comes to writing. Stuff is mostly written out.
Yeah.
And when I came into Obscura, like I can explain that, it was different than with Panzerballett, because like when I came into Obscura, like they had already a lot of albums out.
Right.
So I had to learn all the previous albums.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot in that time period.
I bet you did. I mean, that's a pretty big catalog. Like you said, I mean, I think it was probably 4 or 5 records maybe that even preceded you. So it's a good bit of material. And
yeah,
I guess my question then would be, once you join them, I hear a little bit of a discernible change within the band, both I think where it could go technically and some other things, but how do you feel that you sort of impacted the band upon joining them,
That's a difficult question, but as far as I remember, when I came into the band, we wrote the album Acrasis together. And like it was again a band who writes together. But I had all freedom in the world, like with writing stuff, because like there was no right or wrong. It was just, let's say 90% my own decision of what I play, what not.
Right.
Like sometimes like someone would have asked me to try something different, try a different groove, or try some, but like I had like total freedom of writing. So I came up with all my ideas and like how my vision of how I want to sound in that band.
Right.
It started right with the first album.
Wow.
So I didn't have to copy someone else's work.
Nice. You mentioned sort of the varying and at times disparate styles between rock and metal and jazz and everything. And again, I think that's something that you certainly had within Panzerballett, but I guess at a certain point, just developing the double bass skills and everything else that you have, can't even imagine how long that must have taken. And in doing so, sometimes it can be hard to switch your brain into a sort of opposite approach, more dynamics, etc., lower volume, all that. So for instance, would you be comfortable playing like a traditional jazz gig necessarily?
Yeah, I mean, like I studied jazz at university. I have my own jazz trio. It's
nice.
I don't know if you know if you saw some videos on that. I have like we try to like work together like every couple of months, like to record stuff. But it's not a traditional trio. It's more of like it's a modern jazz trio, guitar, bass, and drums.
Oh,
and
nice.
My teacher back then at university, he's Jeff Boudreau. He's actually from New Orleans. So
that's no way.
yeah, it's not New Orleans, and but he moved to France, and then he started like working on at that university.
Interesting.
Back then I was listening to jazz a lot, and I still do, because like it's funny that I listen more to stuff that I don't necessarily play. I play a lot, like Obsidious would be my main project, and it's more like straight metal all the way. But I like to listen to a lot of like jazz. Some of that stuff would be Ari Hoenig stuff. I love that.
Yeah.
Also, a drummer from New York I've been listening lately, and I really enjoy, is Dan Weiss.
Oh yeah, of course.
I get inspired by listening to that type of like playing,
Right.
that way of playing. But back to your question, if you ask me to play a straight ahead gig at the moment, I could do it, but I don't know if I would sound that well.
Right.
Because I don't, you have to work on, you have to maintain that skill all the time as you do, like as you have for a metal gig, you have to keep on your double bass chops, you know?
Right.
If I'm listening to a lot of that music, it doesn't mean that I can play it well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, especially when you go to the sort of technical extent that you have within the heavier side of music that you operate a lot in, then to, again, like I said earlier, kind of switch your brain and be like, now everything is a lower dynamic, the ride snare, the bass drum is the thing that you play the least at times, you know. It's such between the dynamics and that alone, that is a really hard thing. I mean, I studied jazz and jazz independence and sort of Afro-Cuban Latin stuff in New Orleans as well. And while I could say conceptually, I know some of the independence required to play it, I would by no means say that I was a jazz drummer, nor would I necessarily feel comfortable playing a straight ahead jazz gig, you know?
Yeah. Right.
It's tough.
Yeah,
Man.
there's so much you have to work on. Like it's I mean, I'm sure, like I always was a guy, like I'm interested in so much different kinds of music, and I like to obviously play a lot of different styles. That's why I also like try to keep up working with that jazz trio to like working on that specific sound, but it's not a straight ahead.
Right.
It all takes so much time and work, and it's only one life. It's only 24 hours. It's
I know.
too less time to work on everything.
Yeah.
And you have to decide, man. You have to decide what you really want to do, and then try your best at it.
Yeah. Melding those seemingly disparate worlds into a singular style is hard, as opposed to maybe someone like I grew up in the 90s listening to like Mr. Bungle and Fishbone, and those guys navigated a lot of different styles within a single song. But of course, finding a singular style that's sort of a single approach that works across the board is next to impossible, especially when you're going through like, you know, straight like kind of more fusion style, then into like straight crazy double bass stuff. It's the nature of the beast. I'm just glad that I grew up in the 90s like I said, when I could listen to like Fishbone and Primus and Mr. Bungle and hear all of those different styles within sort of a single song. And it kind of taught me a lot. It was like my own sort of encyclopedic entry into music, being able to hear all these different styles. And then I could sort of pursue the individual ones within a song or an album and find out more about music that way. But it was this weird sort of super diverse primer that led me to all these other styles of music, which is super cool, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
You mentioned fusion. A lot of people talk about Vinnie Colaiuta. Are there any particular drummers within that world that you feel were particularly influential to you?
Yeah, definitely. You just named one. With Panzerballett, for example, I had like Vinnie Colaiuta playing on Alan Holdsworth's album Secrets.
Right.
Was a big influence. And I did transcribe a lot of that album and like study the vocabulary of Vinny's playing there. And he was a really, really big influence. Virgil Donati. Like pretty big influence. Like I can remember when I was about like 12 years or something. It was such an impact he made on me, like listening. Like I had someone put on like a record. I think it was just a sampler of the Modern Drama Festival. He had played back then. It was just
Oh yeah.
like just one song, like in 11, 16, I think. Like, and back then, I was just amazed by his work and playing, and yeah, I'm a big fan of his playing up
Yeah.
to now.
Absolutely. Virgil is definitely a beast. And in regards to Vinnie Colaiuta, I mean, if you're talking about modern prog, fusion, soloing, odd time playing, etc., it's hard for people not to immediately point to Vinnie Colaiuta as a primary influence. And I mean, even if you're not so much into the techier side of some of the aforementioned aspects of playing, at times people will just say, you know, there was just beautiful playing on that Sting record, 10 Summoner's Tales. And of course, there's Vinnie on that one as well, you know, so he's got a little something for everybody, regardless of how techie or just how straight ahead or just how straight studio pro he was. But certainly, I mean, you know, if Frank Zappa says that you're one of the greatest to ever play odd times, etc., you can use that as a glowing golden endorsement for sure.
Right. His vocabulary is it's so big, and
Right.
it's such a deep language that he's speaking. You know, like so detailed, and same with Virgil. And there were some others too, like I mentioned Ari Hoenig. Yeah, back then it was also Simon Phillips.
He's amazing. Like when I watch somebody play a drum solo, he has an incredible musicality, Simon Phillips does. Something that I don't always hear, and I think he's especially musical and dynamic and everything else. I mean, the guy can compose a freaking drum solo like I haven't heard many people do. He's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And what impacted me back then was his way of
Tuning for sure.
tuning, and like he has such an amazing sound. Like he paid so much attention to his sound, and
Yeah.
amazing musician. And there's so many.
I know. It could go on forever.
Mike Manginni was a big influence as well. Like I really was into before he actually joined Dream Theater.
Uh-huh.
When I was aware of his playing was at the time when he joins the Steve Vai band. And I found it really impressive what language he speaks. Like I think like one of the most skilled drummers at that time.
Right. With double bass, and I've talked about it plenty about my own struggles with playing it, and especially with endurance, you know, and perpetually playing at particular BPMs for an extended amount of time. That has just always been tough, and a lot of that, I guess, comes down from bad habits that I have yet to sort of iron out, and or you know, ergonomic setup. Who knows? I just always struggle with it. But I guess, what age were you when you first started playing drums, and then what age did you start getting into double bass?
Okay, I started playing drums at the age of 5.
Wow.
Was the best day of my life. Like my father got me into his car. We drove to the music store. I didn't know that he would buy me a set of drums, and we went to the music store, and I got a 5-piece kit.
Awesome.
Yeah, and like 3 years later, like I didn't stop practicing. Like I really had fun playing the instrument, obviously, and with 8 years I got a more professional kind of kit. It was a Yamaha. And like my father had a trip to Los Angeles at that time, and he bought me a DW 5000 chain drive pedal. And when he came back, gave it to me. So I started playing messing around with double bass at the age of 8.
Wow. Okay, that explains a little bit. I mean, my God, so now I don't know how old you are, but that tells me that you've obviously been playing double bass a long time. And because I've been playing drums for 30 years, and I probably started playing double bass maybe at best 10 years ago. So for those first 20 years, everything from my setup to the distance that my foot was, everything else, I kind of trained myself as a single bass drum player, and then sort of evening my body out to get that balance between everything has just been such a slow going process. I mean, I would imagine in addition to starting at the age of 8, at some point, did you go through specifically both endurance, and I guess this could go for blast beats and everything else, because, you know, you get at a certain BPM, you get into these finer muscle groups, and sort of developing that, just that
Yeah.
is a tough thing. I mean, when did you start getting into the more sort of extreme, faster side of this stuff and developing some of those skills?
That happened much later,
Yeah.
actually. So I built a foundation, so to say. I started with 8. Like one of my heroes at that time was Phillips. What highlight for me was like the double bass section at the end of his solos, like which actually was the climax, and he did that a lot.
Nice.
That was also a nice starting point for me, because that was in a tempo range between 100 and 130 BPM,
Right.
something that you could do easily when you start out playing double bass. So using full leg motion. There was no teacher at the time I had for it. Like, just watched my heroes playing
Yeah.
in my youth, like when I was like 12. So I started playing in my first metal bands, but that was more like all stuff that you could do on a chain drive pedal. Like I can remember that I had to gain speed. That was around the age of 16, 17, when I had a metal band, which asked me to play at tempos around 180 to 200.
Wow.
So I could adapt my technique to the pedal, which was pretty much full leg motion at that time. So get it all out, rock and roll way, like with the whole leg. And I'm a very audio driven person, so I hear something and I adapt my technique to
Right.
what I hear. So
Yeah.
so that led me towards problems sometimes I had physically, because like sometimes maybe I didn't use the right technique to play things, because I just heard what I want to create, and I try to get there with with just hearing. But and that worked out pretty fine. Also Panzerballett, a lot of double bass stuff.
Yeah.
But there's just tempos like 150, 160 is probably, now there's some fast stuff, but it's very rare.
Yeah.
All the things I had to concentrate on is being accurate and like like concentrate on my sound and on my timing, so to say. So it got different and more difficult with Obscura. I wanted to, like, one of my goals was that's what actually the reason, because I wanted to join an extreme metal band, because I want to use those skills that extreme metal drummers do.
Right.
Like I want to, like, I like that sound, and I like when I came into Obscura, I exactly did that. I had a musical reason to develop my technique that way.
Exactly.
It took me ages. Like I was the person, like when I came into the band, like I like to practice a lot. 6 or 8 hours is not something that's a problem for me. I like to sit in there and practice, but I did recognize pretty fast that I keep up with that pace. Like it's impossible to practice that on your technical limit, so to say, for 6 hours a day.
Right.
It's not, because your progression curve physically will go down immediately.
Exactly.
And this is really frustrating.
Yeah.
So you can't force your body to do something. You have to develop a skill, and that program something into your muscle memory, and you have to do it right from the beginning. It will take a couple of months or years to be able to use that skill, and I had to accept that. So when I came into Obscura, I had to learn that, and I had to go with the flow. And still, I practiced a lot, but I had to learn that I have to structure my practice regime in a different way.
Yeah.
Because I had to think more in physical terms, not only musical terms. So I had to, like in sports, for example, you don't train for a marathon in the same intensity every day.
Right.
You want to, if you want to progress towards a goal, you have to gradually progress. There's not a direct way. Like you can't have a skill within hours. It's
Right.
not possible.
Which is unfortunate for someone impatient like myself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and that was actually the time when I also like really brought in the physical side of drumming, and I was really interested in the physical part of drumming. I tried all different things. Like a lot of cardio besides drums,
Right.
running. But in the end, like before, I was just like into music, and as I said, I was an audio-driven person, which is nothing wrong with. But with extreme metal, you have to structure the way you practice in a different way as a drummer.
Yeah.
At the same thing, when you have a rehearsal, you need to take your time to warm up before.
Right.
Like you have to tell your bandmates, you need some time to warm up. You can't start right away at, I don't know, 2:30 or 2:40 or whatever.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And I mean, there's definitely something to be said for the toolbox of skills that you need to be able to navigate not only a song, but an entire set of playing some of this material at these BPMs with that kind of intensity, and everything from breathing, not tensing up your muscles, remaining calm amidst playing intense music and everything else, and all the preparation that has to go into that performance. And as you're talking about, just all of those very physical, kind of mental endurance and fine muscle group exercises that you have to develop and maintain to once again be able to get through a performance of this. And I mean, it's impressive, man.
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
well, it's for example, iconic. The first playthrough I did for the band, like it's like 6 or 7 minutes, and it's a really complex song. It has a lot of different parts, a lot of variations. We start with a motif, but there's a lot of motif development and it's a lot of variation and stuff. So it's happening something different every time. And
Yeah.
like to memorize it, it's is one thing, and
Right.
like you have to learn the music, but at the same way you have to program all the stuff into your muscle memory. That's also a reason why we write out the stuff, so we compose the stuff in a classical manner, like
Uh-huh.
with a following the classical approach, because it's not possible really to improvise on the theme of the song, for
Totally.
example, because it's like it's written and it's so fast, and it's every note has its reason and its place, so it's really serious, so to say, like every note. So it took me 6 months to actually do the playthrough video.
Oh, damn.
It's obviously one take from beginning to end. And the thing I've said, like you have to concentrate on the physical part of it, but you also have to learn the song, and it's two different kinds of things you have to, like
Yeah.
physical things. So to program something in the muscle memory, you need to repetition.
Right.
When you learn a new song with it, which is actually that complex, you need the repetition. You need to play it 100 times or like 300 times
Yeah.
till you can remember it, but your muscles won't do it.
Yeah.
So you need to really structure and organize the time you practice, so it doesn't work in just, even if it's something that you wrote for yourself, like for your band, and it's your style, your stuff that you're playing. It took me just so long to bring it to perfection so I could record it.
Wow. That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Damn, dude. You mentioned, obviously doing the home studio thing and how that saves on cost and whatnot. One of the things that or one of the benefits for having your home studio as well would just be, in my mind, not having the pressure. And of course, some of that is predicated upon the money that you spend in the studio. But with that comes sort of a pressure. And whereas in a home studio, you're on your own time and you can just have the focus without having everyone sort of looking through a control room or, looking at their watches saying, come on, you got to knock this out. I got to get my parts done, everything else. So that's
Right.
one of the biggest mental things or advantages I would say, in addition to cost, in having a home studio. But when you've had those sessions where you've gone into a studio and you're dealing with pretty complex stuff, of which you play a lot, is there any kind of mantra that you have to get you in the headspace to where you can feel confident and not feel burdened by the situation of being in a studio?
Not really.
Yeah.
Because like working in the studio is like my daily routine. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's what I do on a daily basis.
Right.
It's pretty normal for me.
Wow.
At that time. But, you know, like in terms of the iconic playthrough, like I had to work towards that goal, and I asked someone to record the video for me, because like, you know, like I want to have it more professional, like asking a friend of mine doing the video for me, shooting the video, and having multicams, and have someone operating the cameras.
Yeah.
So I don't have to concentrate on all of the stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I prefer to learn the song and play it like 4 or 5 or 6 times, and then that's it. So I like to work that way. So like, doesn't matter where it is. I like also to go somewhere else and record somewhere else, because also hearing my drums in a different room can be inspiring for me. You
Absolutely.
know? Like when I have to work somewhere else, it's refreshing, and I like to work towards that goal, that I practice my stuff I have to record and then go there and record it. I don't necessarily record stuff in pieces, or like, you know, if I'm at home, so I can, like, I like to learn songs, you know, and play them, because I think it sounds different. It's a different approach.
I agree.
I know probably it's not very common in modern metal music anymore,
Right.
and it's just something I feel comfortable with.
Absolutely. I like it. Yeah. I mean, I think it gives it a particular kind of continuity. And then again, if you're going to do a playthrough and you recorded a song in 8 different sections, then you've also got that additional work to get there. But if you've been training all along to try to get through the song in its entirety, that I would think would prep you, of course, for the time that the video cameras are then on, and you've got to get through it in one take. So it all gets you to a better place in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Before we go, if anybody wants to reach out to you for lessons, where do they contact you?
You can contact me actually, like Instagram. You can click onto my profile. You find my email. You can go to my website, which would be the easiest thing. You find my email. You can contact me.
Awesome.
I will write back in between 24 hours. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Man. Let's hope that in 2022 you can actually get out with this new band of yours and actually play a show, having done all this work thus far, man.
Yeah, I would love to totally, like, playing live. That would be something great. I really greatly miss, but I'm sure it will happen sooner or later. I would love to go back to the States as well, and because I enjoyed that a lot, you know. And yeah, Jody, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you and talking drums.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. All right. You have yourself a good day, man.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. That does it for this episode. Definitely thanks to Sebastian for sitting down and walking me through the myriad of steps that he's gone through throughout the years, and gaining such, you know, sort of insight on the instrument and increasing just all of the technical skills needed to play so much of the music that he plays. It's definitely a rarefied space, and you don't get it there without discipline. That's for damn sure. So I hope y'all enjoyed it. We'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.